Welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast, where we talk about the struggles and celebrations that leaders and entrepreneurs experience on their journey to success. I'm your host, Kristina, and I'm passionate about helping you achieve massive amounts of success at work and at home. We'll talk about all things people and organizational wellness, share relatable stories, and feature insightful guests because quality people and processes are at the heart of every success story. Ready to learn, grow, and have fun? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to the Business Building Blocks podcast. I'm your host, Kristina Schmitt. So I have kind of a different episode for you today in that most of the time I am talking about all of the wonderful, awesome things about the working genius. But today I have brought on a wonderful guest to help me do this. Karyn Macfarlane and I are going to talk about all of the objections and all the things that people struggle with around working genius. So welcome, Karyn. Karyn Macfarlane is a wife, a mother of three, a musician, and a certified professional coach and a certified working genius facilitator. She's the founder and owner of Supporting Stars, where she works with teams to leverage their talents and improve productivity, engagement, and morale. She also provides life coaching to wives of high-level performers to help them balance their supportive roles with their own dreams and goals. So welcome, Karyn. I'm so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Kristina. I'm so excited to be here. It's so fun to do this, especially as you were the first certified facilitator that I ever knew or spoke with in real life. And I'm so grateful for your encouragement to me to pursue this. So thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I am so happy to do it. I love the working genius and I want the world to know about it. So however I can make that happen makes me happy. So Karyn, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I'm a wife, mom of three, musician, I'm a violinist, and, I kind of like to say I have a portfolio career. I was actually a business major in college, so coming back to this whole, organizational health and management stuff is really fun. It's like kind of getting back to my roots a bit. So yeah, I do a lot of different things. It's funny the way that I, have pursued different things and even the way I, stumbled upon the working genius itself. I think everything is ultimately like in service of supporting families. I have this service of helping wives, to support their spouses, but also to, go after their things that they want themselves. And so when I learned about the working genius, I thought, oh my gosh, this is it just gives so many explanations and it's so freeing. And I thought, I have to incorporate this. And then it started taking on a life of its own. And then, of course, it just works so well in a team setting. Yes, a marriage is a team of two, but, in the traditional sense of, what we call teams, in an office or organization setting, obviously that's where it really, really shines. So yeah, it's just sort of doing its thing and I'm doing my thing with it. And it's just been really fun to, see groups have all these aha moments and just, watch them implement it and just really see them succeed even more than they might have already been succeeding using this model. So yeah.
Absolutely. I just love how you're able to pull all of your skills and talents and experience and gifts all together to support families, to help teams of two, teams that I always say my home team or my work team, right? So because they're both so critical to our lives. Our home team,
right,
that's our vocation. And then our work team, that's how we support that vocation. So it's so critical.
Right. And then, if you're thriving at work, that makes it a lot easier for you to thrive at home. If you're struggling and just feeling, exasperated and reaching that burnout point or whatever it is that is troublesome at work, you bring that home. So
100%.
Anything that we can do, any tool we can use to help alleviate that, we're all for it, right?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I'm going to get us jumping right into our task at hand here because we have quite a list of objections and just things we've heard either through our clients, through people, just in conversations. And we even went to the expert of ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT to help us come up with just what objections could people possibly have. So we have quite a list of questions. We're going to work through as many as we can. and see where it goes. So are you ready to get rolling?
I think so.
Okay, let's go. So our first question is, I don't trust when a test tries to analyze me. Why should I believe these results? So, Karyn, what are your initial thoughts to that one?
Yeah, I think my initial thoughts are along the lines of, this assessment isn't, trying to define who we are as people. It's just revealing patterns and, in the ways where we naturally show up to different areas of work, and how we approach work and getting things done. So it's not really trying to like analyze us and, break us down into like itty bitty bits of information that, yeah. So, and, not putting us, we're going to get to maybe this part later, but not putting us in boxes and labeling and all of that stuff. So it's just, it's a tool to reflect on like what types and areas of work give us the most energy and joy.
Exactly. And it's not intended to put us in this box either. It's fully intended to just inform us and give us one objective way to say, well, maybe these are the things that drive me and these are the things that frustrate me. And ultimately, I tell this to all my clients, like if you totally disagree with the results and we have like a conversation and we really clarify what's going on, we can change that because there is a subjective portion to it. Back when the result sections first came out, they said, here's your results. Now self-analyze based on all the criteria and then see if they match. So that's kind of how the result pages used to go. I think that they're a little more certain after it came out in 2021. So after 4 years now of data, I know they continue to kind of hone it in. I think they are more certain that they don't actually have that in the results pages anymore, probably because there's so many other things in it, but it was a big portion of it. And so I still do that with clients, both in group sessions and one-on-one sessions where they're, let's talk through it. Let's hit those questions hard.
Right, definitely. I think just, sitting with it with some time, like I think at first, it can feel like, okay, yes, 100%, this nailed it, or not, so I think most of the time it does feel like that. I think, one of the studies showed that it was like a little over 90% of people were agreeing immediately with the results. But yeah, like I think it's a new way of looking at things. And so anything new, we need a little bit of time to kind of process and see, how that fits in with what we do and how we are and all of that. So, and talking with facilitators, like you or me, or really looking at how does each letter in the ranking, like how does that really resonate with me? Mm-hmm. Can help a lot instead of just taking it like, okay, here's your 6 letters, there you go.
Yeah, and I think doing that really helps you buy into your results and then start to contemplate through them, because I know when I first got mine, so I'm ED. So when I first saw my discernment genius, I was like, I'm a terrible decision maker. I don't know what this test is talking about. But as I started to really reflect on both like what's written in there and how it's defined, but also some experiences of other people, I was like, that's why I love to like look at a recipe and then make up my own based on that one. And that's why I love brainstorming with other people, but not by myself.
Right.
So being able to kind of grab some of those experiences from others after reflecting upon it is really, really helps. So you just kind of confirm or deny whether it makes sense or not as well.
Right. And ultimately, like our goal is never to like make someone accept their results, right? Like we want to create a profile that like really resonates with and works for you, that you can like really, you want to buy into that and use it. So, yes. That's what we're trying to do, is make it make sense and something that you do ultimately agree with.
Exactly. Yeah. Because really, I mean, ultimately the goal is to allow you to do your best work at work and to be able to put forth the thing that gives you energy and fulfills you fully. And that's the goal. So it's like, we want to get to the real answer, whether it's what the test is or not.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So this first question kind of leans right into the second question, sort of, but they're related, definitely. But the second one is it backed by science? So you want to take the first crack at this one, Karyn?
So yeah, this one, people do ask about this. Has this been validated? Table group is, I believe, still pursuing and finishing that up. So I'm under the impression that that will be available soon. Right now, it is anecdotal evidence, but over 1 million people have taken this assessment at this point. And the creators, they don't like to say that they created it, but like the discoverers of the model, they've been in this for, gosh, is it 25 years now?
25 years.
Yeah. And so,
right, you have Tracy and you have
right. And so, they just come with decades of experience. And, while it might not, have the verifications of some of your, other maybe quote unquote larger assessments, there is just so much anecdotal evidence that it's difficult to argue with. And when you do see teams implementing it like almost instantly, it's hard to see it as not valuable or valid.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's helpful to, like, if you listen to their podcast and you kind of hear the origin story of how it was created. I guess Pat and someone else, Amy, I think, were, traveling home from a meeting, and it's like, why are you like this? Like, why are you so angry about the results of this meeting? And it started a whole analysis of it. And so they started to really discover like, what is it about that work that he was doing then that frustrated him, even though he loved his job? And it's such a wonderful thing. So when they started doing that, they also started like thinking of people they know and like analyzing that and then having them take the test. So very anecdotal, but very, like, a lot of research and a lot of thought and a lot of experience went into the development of it. And going back to question one's answer, it's not the end all be all. Like, we still want you to objectively look at the letters that in the order that they came and see that, make sure you agree, because if you don't, it's not gonna serve you as well as it could.
Right. And just even beyond, the individual profiles, its use, like just looking at a workflow, that's hard to argue with. Like it really, really, really makes so much sense, like how any project either comes into being at all and then how it eventually gets implemented. So it's just so valuable.
Definitely. Yes. I love how they discovered like that or the activation stage. And I think through so many of my work things, it's like you've got the designers at corporate and then you've got the people trying to make it happen on the floor. And it's like literally everyone's like, oh, they threw it over the wall again. that activation where you make sure it's the right decision and then you get everybody on board, like that was a huge discovery, you could say, that came from just this model development, you could say.
Right. Because it's an area that unintentionally often can get skipped. Absolutely. Or just like not even considered.
Because you don't see it as something that needs to happen, but then if you intentionally do it, so much more success
can make a world of difference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump into number 3. So this one I got from somebody I was just talking with who was like, oh yeah, I do DISC, but I don't like working geniuses. And the reason why is that he said to me, I don't like that it's telling me I'm not good at things. And so as another twist to it is, doesn't ignore skill and experience that I have. Oh.
What did you say to him?
So we didn't actually have time to go. But my first thought was, okay, well, it's not saying that you're not bad because it's a ranking, not a rating. So this is where there's an unfortunate wording on the results page that I wish they would change, and maybe we should, as facilitators, go get them to change it, because it does say, like, in your frustrations is you don't excel at and you don't derive energy from.
Right. Or you're not naturally good at it. Something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines. And it's a very, like, it makes people think that, oh, I'm not good at these things. So, but it is just a preference. And so that's how I try to explain it to clients who are having this question, is that, so it's just a ranking of your preferences. So you're more naturally going to go do those things that are your geniuses, and you're either going to avoid or get very frustrated and annoyed with having to do those things that are in your frustrations. So it's not
or just skip them, like not even intentionally avoid, like it just doesn't even occur to you to address that part.
Exactly. It's not that it's not It's not that you're bad. It's not that you're bad at it. It's that you don't enjoy doing it. So you actually may like be really good at putting yourself in a place you don't like being, and have gotten super good at your frustrations. I actually had a colleague of mine, I had her take the assessment and was floored that she was frustrated by tenacity. I was like, no way. You are just, you are so regular. You're so good at this stuff. She's like, yeah, but I'm just really good at making myself do the thing I don't like doing. I'm like, I need a little bit of that.
We can all use a little bit of that. Yeah. And it's like, it's not even something that, really frustrates you. It's just like, well, where do you just like most naturally default, like, and what's the order of that? Or is that thing not even something that like I just said, frustrates you, but it just doesn't light you up as much as the other four? If there are two that are falling in your frustrations, and even the word frustration is very limiting, it might not even be something that we're literally frustrated by. It might just be something that we don't love as much as the others, or that gives us as much satisfaction as the others.
Exactly. Exactly. So I had an epiphany.
Do share.
Just a thought in that. So wonder is in my frustrations, and what I actually find is I just tend not to do it. Like I'm too antsy and feel too busy to sit and wonder. However,
Okay.
when I sit and I force myself to wonder, I actually do feel good. Like it feels good to do it, but I avoid it, and it doesn't necessarily give me energy. It just feels better. Like it's a calming. But so these things like that are inner frustrations, they're literally just things we just, like you had said, we might just skip over, and we might not think to do because it's kind of like low on our preferences. But it doesn't mean that like we hate them.
Right.
Yes, granted,
Yeah.
tenacity I still don't like, but
Well, I have tenacity as a genius, and I'm like, really? Yet I know for certain that it is one of my geniuses.
I know for certain.
And I can explain why, but that might be a different
I know for sure it's not one of mine. But wonder like is one of those, and it may be one of those because it is like a different sort of genius, right? It's like it's a thought provoking one that it might actually people don't hate it as much. It's just really hard to make those of us who are frustrated in it to sit down and do it. So it could be,
right.
but
Right. But, and also, like, as we all say, like, every job is a 6-letter job. And sometimes we have to do jobs alone. Like, we are not always working with others. And so we really do have to do all 6 sometimes. And, it just is reality, right? So,
yeah.
just taking a look at, okay, is this really a frustration in, the traditional definition of the word frustration, or just, this is probably the 3rd time I'm saying it, but is it just something that I don't enjoy as much as the other areas?
And I mean, ultimately, it's you find workarounds, you find ways, and you've probably got some
Mm-hmm.
natural coping skills that you've created around working through those things. And if you haven't,
Yeah.
but like calling it out and understanding which ones you might need to develop those in. Like I say, a lot of people if they struggle with wonder, it's like, well, schedule that time and you have to stick to it, get an accountability partner. Or if you struggle with like discernment, okay, schedule a discernment meeting and invite a discerner in. Like those are, so there are
Right.
just ways around dealing with it once you understand it, once you can name it. So it's that whole if you
Right.
can name it thing.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So are we ready to move to the next one?
Sure.
Okay, this one is similar again, but this one came out from a client session of mine that I think it was very distressing and concerning. So I don't like that it's telling me not to work on my frustrations in order to get better. Shouldn't I be able to improve on anything? So my first thought on this one is Gallup Strengths Finder. There is a lot of research on that says we want to work on our strengths because we're going to get so much further and so much more improvement by improving our strengths than we are by improving these things that we're not naturally gifted at. And it's very much
Mm-hmm.
the same in terms of geniuses and frustrations, that our geniuses are those things that we're naturally wired to do, and the frustrations we're not naturally wired to do. So work on them to a point that they're not hurting you, and then let it be. understanding that, like you said, every job is a 6-letter job. We're going to have to do it sometimes, but just make sure you're not hurting yourself by the lack of doing it.
Right. And not even just like making sure that you're not hurting yourself, but then if you are concentrating on those areas, you're not allowing someone else who has those as a genius to come in and thrive.
I've got a story about this too. I'm, me, myself, and I with my business for the most part. And a while back, I took my own advice because what I found is I found myself just slogging through my weeks because I was trying to get like background stuff on my website fixed. I was editing the podcast. I was, and I don't even edit it much. Like it just, all of that frustrated me so much. And to me, it was all tenacity work. So I brought on a VA. So it's my beautiful VA, MJ, who is going to edit this. And she does an amazing job at doing that, helping me with all the social media stuff, like all these things that frustrate me. And it allows me, like she feels engaged because she is getting to do this graphic design and all this exciting stuff. And I get to feel engaged because I get to not do it.
Right. And then that frees you to work more on the things that you do enjoy. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Exactly.
And if you do have the ability to fill that gap with someone that you can delegate to, then absolutely by all means.
And so the super interesting part, I hope she's okay, but we actually share the same geniuses. But she's using her discernment in the graphic design world. And so she loves it.
Right.
And I don't have an eye for it and don't want to do it. And it frustrates me to that end. So it feels like a tenacity sort of task because I'm just slogging through trying to get it done. And so it's just interesting. Like I love to kind of point out like how the geniuses will show up differently in different people.
In different people, absolutely. Yeah.
So just to re-clarify that, it's not that you're not meant to work in your frustrations because we all still have to work in the frustrations. But it's not that, but we don't want you to spend ages and eons trying to get better at them because you will run yourself into the ground. So when we look at the whole gamut of it, it's like, well, just be aware when you're working in your competencies and your frustrations and throw some genius work in there where you can because it'll revive you and re-energize you and help you get through that next session of competency or frustration work. Oh, and if you want to improve something, improve your genius because according to Gallup and Clifton Strengths and all of that, that will give you it's like 10 times the amount of return on investment than trying to work on your frustrations.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
All right. So, all right, this one gets into, I think we all hear this one every single time, but it's about the assessment questions. How am I supposed to answer the questions about how others think about me? You want to jump on that one first?
Yeah, that one. I mean, I get it. It's like, well, how am I supposed to know what someone else is thinking about me? Right. But, it is sometimes we do, have a different appearance, or we come across a certain way that is different than what we think or how we think we might be coming across. So, it's, we were talking about this a little earlier before we were recording. As you were pointing out about how sometimes, that answer, like if you don't know, there's a middle choice. And that, when I took the assessment, I felt like I was clicking a lot of those middle ones. I was like, how is this going to turn up with anything? And it did. And I was pleased with the ranking. But yeah, I think, if you think about like, okay, well, a coworker, I think when you do spend enough time with people, you do kind of start to get a glimpse of how they might be perceiving you. A spouse, a good friend. I think maybe we quickly go to, well, I don't know how someone else thinks of me. But if we think about it for just like 2 seconds longer, we might have an inkling of how they might. Yeah. What do you say when people ask?
So very similar to that is that, you're, of course you don't know what they're going to say, but you have an impression of what they think. And that actual opinion, that difference between what I know about me and what I think other people think is actually a gap between what you feel you are naturally and what you think you've trained yourself to do. So there is kind of a gap there that is worth identifying. So it's definitely worthwhile questions because other people are, what we think other people think of us is this view and this persona that we think we're putting to the world. And I don't know how exactly it works in the test, but in theory, it could work with, okay, well, if those answers differ, then maybe the one that I've answered about myself is the true one. And then the one that I'm pretending to be gets downgraded a little bit. So I don't know how the math works behind a test. But in theory, if you're not now doing it or you don't think that it's part of your nature, then it may not be a genius. And if you truly don't know, then it's probably not frustration or a genius, and it lands in the competency work.
In the middle, right.
Which isn't the great influencer. Like that, when we look at the whole gamut of the test, your geniuses are important because you want to focus there, and your frustrations are important because you're going to need workarounds or help in those areas, likely. Your competencies are just something really good to be aware of so you don't spend too much time in them. Because sometimes we don't know that they're competencies and we spend too much time in them because we've always...
Right, because often we are actually quite skilled there.
Exactly, yeah. Because we don't hate it. So it's like, well, it still works.
Right.
So it's a potential burnout zone because you could spend too much time in there and then burn yourself out of it. Mm-hmm. So, mm-hmm. So important question to ask in there. And yes, it's hard, and yes, it's frustrating, and we feel it too. We'll validate those.
But just give it your best shot.
Exactly. We'll validate those feelings all day long, but there is a reason they're there, and it does. All right, let's move on to the next one. Won't this lead to labeling people? And so we kind of jumped on that. So labeling people, putting them in a box, that sort of thing. So just to kind of take a first stab at it, the intention is not to stick people in a box and not to stick a label on them. However, we do tend to say, oh, I'm an enabler, sorts of things. We tend to say that. It's not the intention. And the intention is to truly find what brings you joy and energy. And when we can lean into that, not only are you actually more fulfilled, but you're actually a more engaged employee, because one of those key things of employee engagement is I feel that I get to do my best work every day. And when we feel like we get to use those strengths and those things that we do super well every day, now we're more motivated to work. Now we like coming to work because we get to use those strengths. So it becomes this, like, it's such a good thing to do for the employee and the employer.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And rather than like containing someone, it's freeing them, to be able to thrive in that area, and then release them from an area where they're not necessarily thriving, and then freeing up someone else to thrive in that.
Exactly. It's like everybody getting to do everything that they do best, and that provides efficiency and fulfillment. So
absolutely,
two huge things. Awesome. All right, and this is a good one here. Isn't this just another personality test? I know personally, I have taken a lot. I've taken Myers-Briggs. I've taken DISC several times. I've taken something called Facet 5. I've taken M-Code. I don't even know. There's so many. I can't remember all the names.
Right. And so many of them are fantastic. I mean, they really are. But yeah. Do you want to take the answer or keep going?
I can. But I mean, ultimately, it's not intended to be a personality test. It's intended to dive into how you want to work and how you prefer to work, so that you can, again, use those skill sets.
Right.
Ultimately, I always say with all of the tests, like even if you had every single test result lined up side by side, you still wouldn't have a complete picture of yourself, because we are complex human beings. Like the Lord has built us very complex. It's just another way that we can start to understand a piece of ourselves.
It's that other piece of the puzzle, just another layer. Yeah, it's a little bit personality, but just productivity. It's a productivity tool, much more than a personality tool or evaluator. It's like, I heard one of the table group folks give a great description answering this question, like, okay, do we really need another assessment? Like, there are so many good ones out there. Like, why do we need this? But it's just, I don't know of another one that really addresses how work gets done, and in such a simple and practical way.
I think the simplicity is the key, because I did
take
one that was about how we work, called
quality,
like with a K. And I just...
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I am aware of that one.
hearing somebody explain it to me a little bit more, it's like, oh, okay, I kind of get it, but I can't retain it. Like I can't
Right.
easily put it out there and use it and say, yes, that's going to help me flow work better through places, or it's just, it seems too complex.
Too complicated.
Yeah, like while you may get more information from some of these other ones and it may give you a more in-depth thing, when the goal is to make sure that people get to use their geniuses and flow work smoothly through the organization, you want simple, you want easy to implement.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, once you learn this, like, you're not going to forget it. You're not going to forget like some little itty bitty thing. Oh, what was that? Like, it is instantly memorable and applicable. And, when organizations like go through the effort of having these workshops and trainings, they want to implement it. They don't want it to be this very arduous process of like, okay, now how do we process this and what do we do with it? Like, this is like, all right, right now we can do something with this.
Exactly. You can have nearly instantaneous impact to your organization.
Yeah.
Doing it. And that is for me, like, I love simplicity. My engineer hat going back on my head, but just give me the very practical things to do that we can make this better.
Right. Because if you're not going to use it, then, what good is it? So, yeah.
Right. So definitely worthwhile, another personality test.
Right. Small part personality, much more part productivity.
Exactly. All right. So this one kind of like, we're going to give it a 2-part sort of thing. So the first part is kind of like, how does it handle leadership? And kind of a sub question to that is there an ideal profile for my role? So do you want to jump into that one?
So one of my favorite working genius things is that, and it's addressing this question, is the best leader is the self-aware leader. So any combination of geniuses works for a leader. It's just that awareness of like, where am I going to thrive? Where am I going to show up at my best? And then leaning into those. And then where are the areas where I can delegate? That's great leadership, right? And, as far as the right profile for my job, well, what does your job ask you to do? Like, what are your actual tasks? Mm-hmm. And then I think then, you could come up with, some geniuses, like, okay, well, what are some geniuses that would be required for this? What are some absolutely cannot have as a frustration in this role? But to answer that question with a blanket statement is not really possible, I don't think.
Exactly. Yeah. So my favorite answer is, well, it depends.
Right.
But I mean, ultimately, like, I have clients who are ET and are amazing leaders, and I have clients who are, GD and they're an amazing leader. So you can take any combination of letters and do it. Like you said, self-aware. But I think one thing to add to what you said, Karyn, is you said, what does your job ask you to do? And how much flexibility do you have in that ask? So I know personally for myself in manufacturing as a plant manager for many years, most of the work felt like galvanizing and tenacity work. And it could be a kind of a scenario like with my VA where maybe I was looking at it wrong, but I felt like, so for me, that's a competency and a frustration. So it's
frustration.
Many, many years.
That is a recipe that, yeah.
I was clearly burnt out and struggled with it. And what it did for me is, in the organization I was in, it was very much clear that that was how they saw that role and how it was expected to be done. Had I had a better understanding, maybe I could have been proactive about reorganizing it and having those sorts of conversations, but it wasn't even invented yet at that point. But I could be very successful as an ED, as a leader, if I wanted to be. And if I surrounded myself with people who actually loved galvanizing, and I could say, okay, well, to steal from the table group again, the chief galvanizing officer, like, I would love to have one of those around me all the time. So
right. That's how we should call roles now, like actual positions in organizations, right? Just based on working geniuses.
Exactly. So chief galvanizing officer, tenacity expert,
right,
enabler.
Yeah.
So yes, but I mean, ultimately, there is no role, and your best leader is a self-aware leader. but being aware of what is required of the role and the job description and understanding, hey, that this is like a bulk of a tenacity role. You're going to hate it, Kristina. Understanding that is key for it. So I don't think that they will ever say, this sort of job is only this sort of role. It's just you have to understand what's there and then how other combinations of letters could be supported well.
Absolutely.
All right. So this one we hear quite a bit is, do the results change over time or over the years? So what's your take on that one, Karyn?
Yeah, that one's a really good question. So one, I think, good way to address this is that our skills and capabilities can change over time, but that doesn't mean that like our underlying energy sources or like where we get our joy changes. That is like our God-given gift. It's like, this is really how we're wired. And, our life experiences, of course, form different things. But, if we really think back over our lives, we can start to pinpoint, or describe different scenarios or stories where they're not changing, like, oh, I really do get so much satisfaction out of this part of a project. And it was the same as when I was 11 as it is today, so yeah, I think definitely, like, of course, our skills and experiences, are can change and increase over time. But just our fundamental, like what really gives us joy, I think that's pretty constant.
Exactly. Yeah. And just, coming back to that, these are our God-given gifts. Like, this is, where we were gifted in life. And like, that's not going to change. There may be circumstances. I know, like me personally, having worked so much in galvanizing, like it's almost like to me now, and it's my fourth letter, right? But it can feel like a frustration. But some people will say, that's not a genius of yours. And I'm like, no, it's not. And so it's one of those weird ones that, so you can burn yourself out of a competency so far that it can feel like a frustration, or you can be pretty darn good at a competency that it might feel like a genius as well. But we are wired a certain way. We've probably got a preference that is, hardwired into us. And I would say that potentially the order of the letters could flip a little bit, but I don't think they're gonna, like, you're not gonna have a genius become a frustration or frustration.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Second to last question. So we are flying through these. So what about flexibility? So if someone's focusing on their genius and then avoiding everything else, like, isn't that bad? Karyn, I'd like to go with this one.
Yeah, I mean, we're not even supposed to be living in our geniuses 100% of the time, and like, if you think about that for like 2 seconds, I also would be like, okay, I'm tired of this, so we shouldn't just focus on our geniuses, because like we can't, coming back to like my mentioning reality, like, it's just not reality. So, be flexible. Know that sometimes you're going to have to spend 5 minutes or 5 weeks, whatever it is, in an area that's not as thrilling for you, but just that awareness of the areas that are or aren't, awareness of that area that is not thrilling. It's like, okay, I can do anything for 5 minutes or 5 weeks. But then where can I refuel and get some more of that other, the good stuff, what can I do to bring that into my life? But yeah, we're not supposed to be rigid, like, I only exist in my geniuses. Yeah, it's not possible.
And, coming back to the lovely phrase of every job is a 6-letter job, we are all going to have to spend time in our competencies and frustrations. So the goal is not to do 100% of our work and our geniuses. It is to understand what we enjoy and try to get to a majority level. So I always say like 51% or more.
Right.
Even working that little, you might be frustrated and burnt out from your work. So try to bring in more.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure you talk about it too. We talk about it in our sessions and workshops. If you are overusing a genius, the like unfortunate things that can happen from doing that.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Like, it's that whole, you can overuse your invention genius in the middle of an implementation of a program, and it's like, you're going to frustrate everybody. So
Right.
that ability to say, I should not lean into my genius right now. I have to lean into that frustration because that's what's being called for right now. It goes really back to that self-aware. Like when you're self-aware enough that you can say, this is not the time for me to act in the most natural way that I want to act, that hold back and do the thing I don't love doing.
Right.
All right. And the last question that we've got on our list today, is this just a rebranding of common sense?
I love that one. Why don't you take that one first?
All right. So maybe. Ultimately, yes, we all know these things. We know the things that we're good at. We know the things we struggle with. But so many times we struggle to name it. We have ideas in our head about like, well, I like helping others, or I like, teaching programs or doing podcasts or things like that. I like brainstorming, but I don't know what that means insofar as like how to flow work through, or that it even matters and how work flows through. So yes, it's something we know, but again, when we can name it and when we can say that is that, now I can do something with it, and I can either use it more or use it less, or give myself some help, or recruit in or delegate it because it needs to be delegated to get done well. But yeah, so I'm going to say yes, sort of, but when we can name something, we can actually do something with it and utilize it better.
Yeah, absolutely. The naming, the language of the working genius, and that whole vocabulary of 6 words, that can be nouns or adjectives or verbs. Like when your team has that shared vocabulary and you can just, use these descriptors just in conversation and in planning, it just makes a world of difference, or even just a conversation with 2 people, like, oh, I'm not actually galvanizing you right now, I'm just inventing, that can solve so much in like 2 seconds, solve so much misunderstanding and wasted time and energy and effort and work. And it's because you used this shared language in like half a sentence.
Exactly. So I love that it's like creating more efficiency in conversations.
Right.
Yes. And I often tell my clients to use it in like when you have to give constructive feedback conversations. Understand whether this work or this place, this area they're not meeting expectations in. Understand whether it's a frustration or a potential overuse of a genius or something along those lines, because that can help create that empathy that will make the conversation just kick off that much better. And it will help create a better solution to the issue as well. So there's so many advantages to having that language and having that shared vocabulary.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like you were saying, empathy, like just the understanding that this model creates and allows for, it's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. So much.
And just like when you understand others, it just allows for so much more collaboration and grace, and just the benefits are like inexplicable.
Exactly. Both of us are just like,
I know. We're so excited.
It's that discernment that we both have, that it's like we just know it's good.
Yes.
So amazing. All right. Well, thank you so much for helping me work through some of these questions, Karyn. It has been so lovely to have you on here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. This has been such a pleasure.
Good. And to the listeners, I'm sure there are more questions, there are more objections that you thought of while we were talking today. So if you have more, send them over to me. You can write me a comment on the YouTube channel, or you can send me an email, whatever makes sense. But just let us know some more. And if we get a whole bunch, we'll come back on it. We'll dispel your concerns, because we just want to share this so much. So thank you so much to all the listeners for joining us again today on the Business Building Blocks podcast. And we will see you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the Business Building Blocks podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. If you found value in our conversation, please leave a quick review, like, or share. It helps us reach more amazing listeners like you. For more resources and insights, visit KristinaSchmitt.ca, where you can find tools and support to empower your leadership journey. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.